Andrew Hudson termed this Alpine Fusion. We always joke about it. It's like the best name for it, though. It's like everything you do in alpine climbing, and now we're doing it to look for boulders and climb boulders. It's this crazy idea. And I was thinking as you were talking about it, kind of describing it better, to talk about bouldering, which has been this easily accessible part of our sport, maybe the most accessible. And then you're tying it in with like the most intensive form of our sports ever seen, alpine climbing, the most kind of berserk, crazy approach to climbing we've ever had. And like we're blending them. You're right. We're going out forever, hiking long distances, going over crazy terrain, all kinds of dangers. To climb a boulder, as you described it that way, asking your question, I thought about it. That is kind of wild.
Welcome to the Testpiece podcast. This podcast is about all things high-level climbing, how to go from good to great. I'm your host, Joshua Horsley. I've been climbing for over 30 years. We recently updated our Patreon, and now you get exclusive content from the guests that you love. You get your episodes before everyone else, and they're ad-free. Try it out now at patreon.com/testpiece with a free 7-day trial. Okay, let's start the show. All right, Davin, welcome to the Testpiece podcast, man. How's it going?
Good. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Davin, I just realized as I was introing you that I have no idea how to pronounce your last name. Although I got to tell you, Davin is like your calling card. It's I don't know anyone else named Davin. So, I mean, if you just want to stand as Davin and anonymous, you can't. Otherwise, maybe you could say your last name for me.
Bagdonas. Yeah. But
Bagdonas.
Davin, we can go with Davin. Depends on who you talk to. Bag of Donuts has been floated. Bartakamus. So Davin works. Yeah.
Bag of Donuts is when you fail to send. You're like, damn.
Yeah. Unfortunately, more common than I'd hope, but yeah.
Well, Davin, your name that stood out for me just kept coming up. You were just Davin to me because every time I talk to, there's been a lot of people on the podcast where your name just kept coming up, man. It was Jimmy Webb. People know that name, Jamie Emerson. I want to say Eric Jerome and maybe even Roman talked about you too. Your name just there. I was like, hey, you guys, like, who should I talk to? And I'm always interested in not just talking to, I don't know. I was going to say Adam Ondra, but I would like to talk to Adam Ondra. He's an interesting guy. And your name is just Davin, the Davin. And so I'm really grateful to have you come on here. And I think it's just interesting that you're this kind of behind the scenes person that is with all these pro climbers doing these amazing adventures. And then as we talked more, I became not so surprised. It sounds like you've been out there in the world developing thousands of routes over the last 30 years, all over the world. And first of all, thank you. I always appreciate people who are out there creating the playing field that so many of us enjoy the sport and so few of us dedicate ourselves to growing. So thank you. But I just kind of want to hear how that journey started. That's a long time of climbing and a lot of routes. So maybe we can start out in your early days.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, first, thanks. Thanks for being here and being able to share, this side of climbing, this side of bouldering. And those guys who are name dropping Davin, that's a big honor. Those guys have contributed so much. So that's cool. But yeah, climbing, 30 plus years, 33 years, 34 years, something like that. Started in Wyoming. I hope to finish in Wyoming, live here now because it goes on forever. There are so much rock here. I lived up in the Wind River Mountains, Northwest Wyoming. That was like climbing peaks, crack climbing, alpine climbing kind of stuff. And the rocks, as I got older, the rocks got smaller and just found this absolute passion for bouldering. It's just like everything I do is bouldering focused,
That's kind of surprising. Just I started climbing maybe 30 years ago, and bouldering was not even real. Like bouldering, I don't even know if it was really like a term. It was just like something one could do. It was allowed for you to climb without a rope on smaller pebbles. And yeah, what was kind of the predominant style up there, and how did you even hear about boulder? Or like, how did you even come into your vision?
Yeah, I mean, this makes me feel old for sure. But back then, we had this guy Fred Nicole who was like pushing bouldering to absolutely,
oh, that guy,
yeah, to unrealistic levels. So I was crack climbing a lot at Vitavu, like really taking it very seriously, and we had like a dozen boulder problems, mostly crack boulders. And I started seeing these things Fred was doing. I was young and impressionable. I was in high school by that time, and it's like, oh man, like that's so amazing. And I mean, the boulders we had, you go out and struggle on like a V4 and you were so psyched when you'd finish it after a few days of work, and then you'd see a picture of Fred on like 8B, B13. You're just like, what is this? And the rock is different, like swirly nice. I remember when the magic wood first was like revealed, and you're seeing these like apartment sized boulders of the best rock you've ever seen in your life. And I just had to go find that for myself, And it was such a traditional community I was in. It was like secret at first. Like, I'm not going to tell these crack climbers I'm with that I'm going bouldering. So I was doing it alone at first, you drive up, start looking for these absolutely mega boulders, and kept it secret for a few years. That's how it started.
Was it even called V4 at that time? It might not have even like did the V scale, you should have just lied to them and been like, oh, I'm climbing 511X is what it is.
Yeah.
No, I'm practicing my soloing because I have no partner. But yeah, I'm curious what the kind of like rock. I haven't really even been to Wyoming except for to drive through it. I'm curious what the rock type is like there, why there's so many cracks, and what that meant for bouldering and what the kind of bouldering ended up being, since I think some of the styles that come into vogue in the place have to do with the rock. Like if you're going to be in Switzerland up high in the Alps and there's these giant snowy towers with these sheer rock faces, it's like, okay, like alpine climbing, big wall. But then, you're in a place with a lot of crack climbing, and maybe just you can help. I think that I'm not alone in being someone who hasn't climbed much in Wyoming.
Yeah. Jamie Emerson, I joke about this a lot. Still to this day, it was a very real thing a decade ago, but Vitavu, Wyoming, you think of this like very sharp, knobby granite, flared cracks. It's kind of a bad experience, honestly. And we started bouldering there, like crystal pulling, old school technical, you're doing slabs and cracks, and there were steep things too. But it was that rock quality that you touched on, that rock quality, like you would see these comparisons. So you'd find a steep wall at Vitavu, the holds are just miserable. And then you see a steep wall coming out of Switzerland with a picture of Fred on it. You're just like, that's what I want. I want to do that. And that's how the quest started. You just start going to find the best possible rock you can find. There were some hints, like on the Front Range, Dave was up at the park. Some of those early climbers, like I remember when Circadian Rhythms got done in Poudre Canyon, you immediately like next day drive down and look at it and you're like, oh, that's what a really good boulder problem is on really good rock. Like that makes sense. Yeah. So Wyoming, to answer your question, Wyoming, everyone thinks of Wyoming as Vitavu. I think everyone should think of Wyoming as like the Wind Rivers, the Tetons, the Laramie Range. These places, they're all nice. It's like swirly gray, nice, phenomenal rock, really good compact granite. Rock on par with the best there is for sure.
Just because I know you have such a background in geology, help me understand. So you're just talking about the Front Range and Dave Graham establishing some amazing climbing back in the day. Circadian Rhythm is kind of like, when that went up, it was 8B that's very iconic. And you aren't too far from it in Wyoming. So does the do the Rockies just continue up along the north all the way up through Canadian Rockies, and then we're just talking about where Vita Vu is and all this bouldering? Is it kind of like just on that eastern slope? Like, is this similar area as all of the Front Ranges in Colorado?
Oh man, it's both, right? So I guess full disclosure, I'm a geologist and like specifically studied, granite, gneiss, those hard rock, the things we want to climb on. So probably got spoiled there. But it's both. We have stuff that's a lot like the best rock on the Front Range, right? And everyone's heard of at this point Multiverse and Neverland and all this stuff in Wyoming going on down in this corner. It's nice, it's granite, but it's really good rock. And then there's like the other corner of the state, like Grizzly Bear Country, the Winds. There was a mellow film on the Winds trip, one on the Tetons, and I mean that's probably closer to like Swiss rock, right? With a twist, with that more wild Wyoming twist to it. The Tetons, there was a mellow short on that. It was titled "Best Rock in the World?" Question mark. That's it. I mean, it's that good. It's that gray swirly. It's what you want. It's what you seek when you're wandering through these mountains looking for this, for sure.
I love those mellow videos. It just makes me think of the footage of the lake at the Revenant, and I don't know. I don't want to try to even do it justice on a podcast. Just go watch those videos because it looks incredible. So you started out going and developing stuff because there was nothing there, and then years later, you just continued that question. I kind of want to understand. It's one thing to start climbing boulder problems because there's no one around doing it, and you see a picture of Fred Nicole, which, by the way, I just wish, like, I wonder what is the one that 12-year-old or maybe 15-year-old Davin saw that was like, do you remember? Is there like one that sticks in your head of like Fred Nicole being Fred Nicole?
There's two. There's like Raja, the first V14.
Oh yeah.
And it's not even like the best rock or the best boulder, but you're just like, whoa, that's so different than what I'm struggling on here in Wyoming on the frontier, And then it was Fred's brother on Astronautengefieber, that thing in Magic Wood that's just all these rails. It's like, I think it's an 11 now or a 12. I think it was 12 when it was first put up. And you're just like, how does granite form that compact and that good, in this forest, old growth forest? It's the landscape too, I guess. In that when you're just seeing these boulders in a mossy forest, and yeah.
So maybe that explains it. So what I was going to ask is, you're young, you're in Wyoming, you're climbing on everything you can around you, but I know you have traveled all over the world to develop boulders and, in your own words, looked for the very best stone. And so what was that transition like when you went from, this is my backyard, I'm going to just do things in my backyard, and then start expanding your vision to other areas? Because I think that's a big change and kind of sets you apart from someone that's just like, well, it's in my backyard. Like, I'm going to contribute to the community, or I'm gonna, not just contribute, I'm going to build something, or even for just myself. When did you start going further away?
Yeah. I think it was pretty early on. Like, I grew up traveling a lot. Family in Finland, we traveled over there. My parents traveled a lot. So I think the travel side was kind of came with the territory. Like, I wasn't restricted with just my backyard. A lot of these guys develop, and for good reason, just focus, a 2 hour circle from home or something generic like that, or a particular mountain range. I just wanted to see as much as I could. Wanted to see new landscapes. And a lot of the travel overseas wasn't to establish zones. I know that Magic Wood is there. I know it's in South Africa. Sadly, I haven't been to a lot of those places. But it was like, I went to Finland and was looking for boulders where they hadn't found boulders yet. I went to China, 2 separate trips, traveled all over. It was like, where in the world can I put a pin where there's like no knowledge, where there's nothing that's been found? So that adventure side, for sure. Like, how far out there can we really go and look at these things?
Did you ever do this pre-Google Earth. Like it's
Oh
very
yeah.
easy for me to wrap my head around Google Earth, and you see a big rock outcropping, or you know, you understand the topology and you say, okay, there's big mountains here, there's a funnel here, we're going to find big boulders likely. But how did you, yeah, like, did you just do that thing when you were a kid where you spin the globe and then put your finger down and say,
Yeah.
let's buy a plane ticket, guys? Or yeah, how did it go pre-Google Earth?
Oh man, that's honestly been an epic journey for those of us hunting boulders, and it really is a hunt. Like, so before Google Earth, we had this thing called Terra Server, and I know the old school dudes out there listening are gonna be familiar. It was like the first like plain flyover black and white imagery and topo maps that were like you could turn on layers, just horrendous resolution. You couldn't see anything. And then, before that was honestly like you just drive. You just go to the mountains, drive, hike. You knew under the bigger walls there'd be boulders, but you'd have success like 1 in 10 times, right? Like some days you wouldn't even see a rock, honestly. And it just evolved, yeah. And it's man, we have it spoiled. It's so easy now. You can like look at elevation, like go through like the Google Earth maps we have are wild. If you look at Jamie's, look at mine. I know Jimmy's got, a million pins. It's amazing. Yeah. Millions and millions of pins now. And it's so easy now because you can see the swirls in the rock. But before,
Wow.
before it was just brute force, man. You just like, but it's that adventure side, right? You're out for a day. You're there alone. You're with friends. You got your dogs. You're just running around for miles. You're not at work. It's just awesome. You're just out in the mountains every day. So yeah, it didn't hurt as bad when you didn't find it, right?
I was talking to Jimmy about this. I think we're actually talking about skiing or backcountry skiing, but this idea that when you spend time in the mountains with this kind of frame, that the world starts looking different. And I wish I could see the world through your eyes when you're walking around the forest and you see, or even on Google Earth, it's like, you're like, okay, here's an alpine lake and like I can see based on the way this gully works. Like, I bet you can just kind of like the world looks differently for you and has probably evolved over your whole career. And I don't know. There's not a question other than just a jealousy. Like your frame of reference and how you view the world must be beautiful. And I'm curious what's the similarities you see when you go to China versus Wyoming, and like, is it the same kind of cues that you look for? Like, is the geology totally different? We're all still looking for boulders, but the world looks way different in China than here. I know I've
Yeah.
been, I've climbed there too.
Yeah. I think you touched on it. It's like an intimacy with the landscape, honestly. Like you get all those years just wandering, hunting boulders, and hunting routes too. Just hunting for rock, basically. Um, you just gain this subconscious understanding of the world, this landscape. And I don't know if it changes necessarily. Like a mountain in China and a mountain in Wyoming are they're kind of laid out the same way, right? It's just a lot crazier going to China, not understanding what anybody's saying, traveling for 3 days, out into some remote spot and trying to figure out how to get there. But once you're there, like it's the same. The good boulders found there, like the good boulders found here. And actually, I think the takeaway is everywhere I've ever gone is like repeated tenfold here in Wyoming. Like it's here. I don't have to go that far. And I think that's maybe, people out there looking for boulders. You get stuck in your backyard because you get more intimate with it. You start seeing the details. You just kind of get this hunch, you feel where you should go next. And yeah, I think that's the connection there for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes you travel and you come back and you see your own place in a whole new light, which actually I think is kind of one of the points of travel. I've seen a bunch. There's been a bunch of hard boulders that people did in their backyard. You mentioned Finland. Remember, Nale did that Burden of Dreams. Aiden Roberts supposedly just did something very difficult for him, kind of in his backyard, and it's really his style. It's just kind of cool, that you travel. I will say that China, I climbed at, the Moon Arch and White Mountain, these sport climbing places. I actually went with Ethan Pringle. I remember him saying that he thought that that was some of the best rock, the best limestone rock he had ever been on. And I just remember we're driving around. It seems like there's more there. And talk about adventure, especially back then. Mainland China felt like a wild adventure that I will never forget. I really cherish that trip. So
Yeah. Wild over there.
yeah. So that's great that Wyoming, that you have it in your backyard, but I know you love this adventure and traveling. And I guess I want to hear about that first time that you booked a plane ticket to a place on the map that you hoped had boulders, and just kind of, what was that process like, just hopping on a plane and flying out to, I don't know, wherever it was?
I mean, like the first like total unknown was China. Um, I'd finished university down here in Wyoming, and I was kind of looking for something to do, like what was next. I was still climbing basically full time, and I like just this crazy feeling of like I have to go somewhere totally uncomfortable. I was like, all right, opposite side of the world, China's total unknown. I'd seen a couple like pictures, like the very very early days of Instagram. Um, Even before that, I guess 8A had some pictures coming out of China. Seemed super secret, super hard to access. I made contact with a guy, Rocker. He was in Qingdao, Yantai Peninsula. He said, "Yeah, there's endless boulders here." I happen to know an old school boulder, Scott Blunk, kind of John Sherman's generation. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, way back, and he'd actually been there and said, "Yeah, it's basically Yosemite granite forever, untapped." So that was enough. So I went over. I was assured, everybody speaks English. It's gonna be awesome. So I went for, it was like 6 or 7 weeks. I got an apartment in the city, which was wild in itself. Like first European or whatever to be in that part of Qingdao, and immediately realized like nobody speaks English. I have no idea how anything works here. Like total immersion overnight. And we just went and found tons of rock. You just endless. Blew my mind. You're standing on top of a mountain of thousands of boulders, Yosemite style granite. And as far as you can see in every direction are just other mountains of Yosemite granite. The only thing that ends there is the ocean. The Yellow Sea hits and chops it all off. And it blew my mind. Definitely blew my mind.
Gosh, I bet you that's still pretty untapped, is my hunch. The Chinese climbing scene is coming up, but that's probably still pretty open.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. You're bringing me back to my trip, because I assume this is pre iPhone. This is early on. And I remember it was hard to get around. We flew into Hong Kong. We had no idea how we were going to get down to Guilin, and just, missed the train, almost got scammed, ended up on a bus that broke down. I think, to me, Davin, like, it's just so cool hearing about how you're climbing, you're in college, and you're like, let's go on an adventure. And I really miss that now as I get older. I feel like I don't have as many big adventures, and you are still out there adventuring. And I think it's this thing that we're always doing here on the podcast is everyone has a different vision of climbing. It could be chasing all the benchmarks on the moon board, which is a vision of climbing. It could be, long limestone routes in Spain, which is a vision of climbing. And I just find it fascinating that everyone has their own little portal in which to view it. And, hearing about the adventure side of things is something that I feel like used to be part and parcel with climbing. In fact, it was almost like, if you think about Everest or something, like, I mean, it's like, what's that famous saying? Like, because it's there and because it's like far away, it's the whole journey. And so I think it's cool to hear about these things you're doing. And it sounds like China got the ball rolling, but where did that you're still going on big adventures. You and Jamie Emerson went to Alaska
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
How many places have you gone? Can we start putting some pins around the world here?
Oh man. Yeah. Well, it's funny because like there's a lot of jokes in the kind of the inner group of us, who are always in contact about what the next adventure is. And the joke is I never leave Wyoming. And for the most part I don't, but I've been, yeah, I mean, through Canada, went to Mexico. With our honeymoon is actually exploring new boulders in Baja. um, yeah, I've been to Wales and Australia. Trying to look for those new areas. China twice, of course. Um, a lot of it through the U.S. though. It's been tons and tons of time in Utah. For totally forgotten like entire regions of Colorado, Oregon, all over really. I lost my train of thought there with
It's because
everywhere
there's
I've
too many
gone.
places.
Yeah, yeah,
Rough. It's like all those years of adventure. There's too many.
yeah. There are so many.
So you said that you got called an accidental developer, where you just first it started out no one else was doing it and you started doing it. But then you made a comment to me about how you just were like, oh man, I realized all of a sudden that recently you realized that you're just standing in the same room as some of the world's best athletes who we named and we're lucky enough to have on the pod throughout the last year or so. And also that you're just in contact with some of these prolific developers, all looking to find this very best stone.
Yeah,
And so I'm kind of curious. I mean, there's two things there. It's like, how did you all of a sudden, meet all these amazing people that are around you? And then what is this very best stone? That's like a very, like, as someone who's traveled the world for the best stone, what does that really mean?
yeah. Oh man, it's yeah, big questions. It's a obsession, right? I think the immediate connection is just this absolutely obsessed with this. And I've started to think about it. Maybe I'm older now and kind of getting sappy and like reflecting on some younger times of my life, but I did. I finally realized like this hunt, this never-ending hunt to find the best boulder I can find is shared by a lot of other climbers, and in particular, some of these athletes going out and trying to do not just the most difficult, but the most beautiful boulders on the most beautiful rock in the world, and part of that is being in these insane places. It's not just a boulder that's sitting in a city park. It's like getting out there. That boulder is part of a landscape, so it's an obsession. I think the connection I finally realized is there are a lot of very, very motivated people, very motivated climbers, very motivated athletes. Um, there's a group of us who just aren't satisfied. We're just like, we're content. We're doing this as often as we can. But there's always maybe something better out there, something more beautiful. Maybe the rock's just a little bit better. Holds are a little more friendly. Something that like that boulder is a national park in itself. That one boulder with the best problem in the world on it. I know there's this star rating, right? The theoretical 5-star problem, total perfection. It's out there, and maybe there's a bunch of us looking for it, and we're just not satisfied yet. I don't know if we found it.
I definitely got stuck in my head that all of the best areas were found. I have no reason why. I think you just walk into the buttermilks or something, which was kind of like my first bouldering area that I was just dumbfounded by. And then I started going to Waco and Yosemite, and you just think, oh, like it's already been done. And it's hard for me to imagine that there's more out there. And then when I start talking to you and Jamie and Jimmy, that there's endless opportunities out there. And I wonder, I find it interesting that what we do when we boulder. I know you do a lot of route developing and all, as well, but it's funny, like we climb something that's really, really small in the grand scheme of things. You know, it's not Mount Everest. Uh, and sometimes we don't get that adventure because it's right off the road. And it's like that. I think one of the big explosions in the growth of bouldering is that it's so easy to do. You don't need someone's permission. You don't need someone to belay you. You just can walk up and do it. And that has become almost synonymous with driving up and doing it. And I just love this slant that you guys bring into it, where it's like, no, this can be the most wild, epic adventure as anything you've ever seen before. We just choose to participate in it, you know, in this manner, which I love that kind of juxtaposition.
It's like a probability equation. Like the best thing in the world, and you're right, it's endless. There's so much rock to still look at. The joke will probably be on us. The best boulder, the best problem in the world will probably be roadside one day. But a lot of roads have been traveled by climbers looking for it. So probability, we're probably going to find it somewhere that's not roadside, right? We got to go where no one's been before. The adventure side of it, the beauty of it, the whole process. There's a lot more involved getting out there and spending years. I mean, years in a portion of a mountain race to make a single trip happen to a single boulder. And there's something just incredible about that approach. It just adds. I don't know. You can't really rank it at some point. It's just a wild. It's a wild experience to be driven that hard, and it's very hard to find people interested in doing that. And that's I think how this kind of group of us have come together. We're willing, whatever it takes, as far as we have to go, to just get out there, lose touch with society, and just find these things we want to climb. Just get out there.
Yeah, let's go more into that, because again, this is this vision I see in different climbers. So some people, they boulder, and what they want to do is keep pushing higher and higher and taller and more dangerous. And, you know, there's all these different ways to push it. And so you and this crew are going deep into places with that. It's, you know, miles is an understatement. You know, multi-day journeys and into places that are dangerous and not well traveled, and have things like grizzly bears, you know, wild weather that if you get stuck out in the middle of nowhere could be an issue. And what's your relationship with danger? And, you know, is that like kind of part of the fun? Like, you know, would you prefer that there's no grizzly bears, or is that just kind of part and parcel with what the experience is and getting really out there? Like, you know, what are you looking for?
So a friend of mine used to live in Laramie here. Andrew Hudson termed this Alpine Fusion, and it's like the best. We always joke about it. It's like the best name for it, though. It's like everything you do in alpine climbing, and now we're doing it to look for boulders and climb boulders. So it's this crazy idea. And I was thinking as you were talking about it, kind of describing it better, to talk about bouldering, which has been this easily accessible part of our sport, you know, maybe the most accessible. And then you're tying it in with like the most intensive form of our sports ever seen, alpine climbing, the most kind of berserk, crazy approach to climbing we've ever had. And like we're blending them. You're right. We're going out forever, hiking long distances, going over crazy terrain, all kinds of dangers. To climb a boulder is kind of, as you described it that way, asking your question, I thought about it. That is kind of wild. It's a I don't want to say it's a novel approach, because I think boulders have always been climbed out in those wild places. You know, the first wilderness big walls, those guys, Royal Robbins, they were bouldering, but they weren't bouldering the way we're looking to boulder, right? So it is something I think kind of new. I think it's that aspect of not being satisfied with, you know, the status quo, what's been done. Honestly, the craziest things I've ever done were not alpine climbing. I used to do quite a bit of that, but recon for boulders, like those hunting trips you go on, do some absolutely stupid day hike in the winds, you know, 26 miles or something. I had one that was like 47 miles in less than 24 hours to go look at like millions of boulders, and then the trip to Alaska last year, like the most remote place you could go in Alaska to look for boulders. I don't know if it makes sense, but
Well, it doesn't have to. I mean, climbing itself doesn't make sense. But again, this is like the interesting lens to me. It's like, well, why would bouldering high stuff make sense? Like, why would you do that? Like, this is dumb. You're going to break your leg. It's like, I don't know. Like, it's just like, there's something about feeling exposed up high and feeling that air beneath you and finding out what you're made of when all of a sudden you're way off the deck. And it's like, what are you made out of when you're 3 days deep in grizzly country? And if something goes wrong, you don't get to just call 911 and say, hey, like I twisted my ankle, like, take me to the nearest hospital. And so I think it makes sense to me. I like that Alpine Fusion. I get it. Like, it's what I found interesting talking to Jimmy is I just think that, one of the reasons why I like to bring this up on the pod is I just think that you leave breadcrumbs for people who want to have an experience like you.
Yeah.
And I do too. I always say this to my buddies. We go climbing, we're doing all the guidebook stuff, it's like, oh, we'll go find this boulder and try to repeat it. And then after a while, or at least I would get this itch for an epic, and they would often happen accidentally. It's like, oh, we got way lost. We just did, and then it got dark and we just completely got lost. And, you're out till 2 a.m. and then somehow you're like, oh my God, there's the parking lot. Like, and you bumble into it just at the last moment. And I always say that I always like them in hindsight, but it's not, you can't just go have a epic adventure unless you get in so deep that you don't want to be there. And it's like this weird thing that I don't quite understand about myself or human psychology, where I don't want to do it in the moment, but then I crave it at these certain intervals. And so it's why I'm trying to, understand, like, how's the danger working to, like, what are you doing out there, man?
I think that's it. It's like you just, it's another way to push ourselves, to test ourselves. We can go try a boulder at whatever level that we want to test ourselves with, but to add it on top of all of that is just another way. Yeah. And you're right. You get so far out there. You're like, why am I doing this? I'm never going to do this again. You get to the trailhead, you start driving home, and you're like, man, I got to come back like next weekend and do this again. It's an addiction for sure. It's like anything else, though, that really tests you. It's incredible when it works.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know you did that big trip to the winds with Jimmy. I don't know if Jamie was out there for the one with the Revenant, and Eric was out there, Eric Jerome. What do you learn about yourself and each other when you're 5 days deep and you are scared? You actually are scared or tired and hungry.
Oh man. So the winds trip, that final trip to the winds was a couple years ago now. We skipped it last summer. So summer before, when Jimmy finished his project, the Revenant, that took, behind the scenes, that took 5 or 6 years to put together to make that work. So yeah, Jamie's been part of that. A bunch of people have, but that, it goes back a long way. Growing up in the winds, I started hiking further and further out. I kind of called it the Wind River High Mark. Like, how far can you go into the winds and establish a boulder problem? And I kind of, arbitrarily, I'm nowhere near Jimmy's level in climbing, obviously. So for me, the idea is how far in the winds could I go and do like a V10? Can I go in 30 miles, establish a V10 and come out? And kind of the wild side is like, could I do that in a day? Maybe, always in the back of my head. And I think, I connected with Jimmy 10 years ago, and we immediately realized that this kind of Wind River High Mark is probably something more special. You could go in there and spend like a week or two and put up boulders in the most beautiful places. And it really became, where's the best possible rock we can find? What's the best boulder in the entire Wind River range? And so I think, we'll find others that are amazing, but the Revenant, and it doesn't get talked about much. The Lost Eagle, the 8B he put up a couple years prior, that might be a better boulder and unreal. But that's how it came together. The first trip to the Winds was just Jimmy and myself. We had a friend, Brian Vance, will come out a few days later and meet us. And that was literally just me and Jimmy carrying pads out. And then, each year you're kind of doing a little bit more. The most insane single day of my life was with Jimmy and his friend Rami when we found the area where the Revenant sits, found Lost Eagle, found all that in one day. Absolutely insane day trip. That was 26 miles. We were out after dark. We had belly button deep whitewater crossing where we're all like locking arms in the dark, trying to cross this thing in a mosquito horde, grizzly country. I mean, it was insane. But we got back and we're like, man, okay, I think we found it. Now is it possible to get pads up there? And we went back with pads that year, took a break the following year because of weather, and just kind of pieced it together. 5 years later, Jimmy got the Revenant done. And what it's like, you're selective, right? You have to pick people you trust, because when you are out after dark, locking shoulders, crossing a river that's raging, more than waist deep, you got to depend on those guys. That's always in the back of your mind, right? It's a crazy thing to do, to be out in Talus. The alpine climbers go through the Talus as fast as they can. They don't want to spend time there, and we're going out to spend 8 days straight in this stuff. So you learn a lot who you can trust. It's a really close bond. We jokingly call it the men's health retreat. That's just because there were dudes there. Anyone can come up. It could just be the health retreat for whoever's there. But it's it's almost spiritual. You connect and
I always say that climbing builds these deep relationships because, for two reasons, I think. Your life is often literally in someone else's hands. You have to really trust them. Then you also get to see people, what they're like when they fail, because there's a lot of failing. And, some people won't put it out there. Some people put it out there, throw temper tantrums. And I'm not going to say like one is right or wrong. Just like you get to really see what people are like when they bump up against failure. But then you also, when you go deep into the wild, I mean, even just, I haven't gone that deep, but even just like a taste of it, it's like, what happens when you're cold and hungry and tired? Like, who's your buddy at 2 a.m? And I think you build these deep bonds, and I always would have someone on my crew, if I'm doing a tall boulder or even a sport climb, and just look at them. It's like, do you got me? Like, do you have me?
Yeah.
Like, hey man, it's me. Like, are you here? And I have this image of you and Jimmy and Rami. Rami's a great dude, crossing that river in 2 a.m, and you gotta be like, hey, let's not fuck this up.
Yeah.
This is serious.
Yeah.
And so I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Climbing's amazing that way. It just distills down those relationships to, just the fundamental pieces. Those are deep connections with these guys for sure.
That picture of Jimmy on the Revenant with I don't know what that lake is called in the background. I mean, Davin, just like 15 or 16, I don't know how old you were when you saw that picture of Fred on Raja, when that hits the internet, you are inspiring people in the same way you got inspired, and such a different way. It does blow my mind. God, just props to Jimmy. I mean, Davin, you're an incredible climber in your own right, but geez, props to Jimmy that he's doing that at a harder difficulty out in the middle of nowhere. So just, that's Jimmy being Jimmy. But you guys are sparking that same kind of thing for a new generation. And with that in mind, with that whole experience in mind, I still gotta poke on this very best stone. Like, what, as someone who has maybe seen more boulders, potentially more boulders than anyone in the world, what does make a good boulder? Let's go in a little bit deeper than just good rock? Like, what does good rock really mean to you exactly? And why did the Revenant stick out? And what other ones, kind of make your list of like, this is cool. Like, this is special.
Yeah, well, the Revenant's a good example to start talking about it. You see that image; it's iconic, and it takes someone like Jimmy to climb that thing. I mean, that's a HC out there in the wilderness. It takes someone. I've been able to take my experience growing up in those mountains and the alpine climbing and all of that to get us out there and really make it comfortable. So like all that's captured in that image, that thing is just out there. The rock is absolutely perfect. It's swirly rock. It's been out there for eternity. It used to have glaciers underneath it, just carving valleys, and it was sitting on the hillside catching the weather. The holes were getting shaped, and you see that all in that image. I think that best captures, what is the best rock. Brian Capps, years ago, when we first went up to the winds, there was a little panel of rock, southern winds, so a different part of the winds. And he's like, this rock should be in a museum. If there was a museum of boulders, what would be in it? And if that museum had very limited space, if you had a dozen boulders, if you had the top 30 boulders, top 100 boulders in the world, what would go into that museum? And I think sometimes it's just the rock. Sometimes you see a piece of rock that is so insane. Some of the rock panels I've seen in the Tetons, it's just, you have to touch it. It doesn't matter what the grade is. You have to climb. You have to move on that rock. Sometimes it's that rock in the landscape. Sometimes it's that thing, the Revenant sitting above that lake. I wish the image was out there. It should be. When Jimmy put up the Lost Eagle, this giant pointy crag, this huge mountain behind him. It's an Alpine objective, and he's climbing this V13 that's just enormous. That's probably that boulder. That boulder itself is like, you're not going to find better rock than that. The rock quality on it is wild.
Something you said that never occurred to me is that there's this almost history that gets imbued into the rock. It landed there through whatever geological event. You've got glaciers, and then you talked about where it's pointing and the weather it has endured and been formed by over millennia, and that's all what makes it special. It gets like this almost aura around it, because I often, this is like a conversation I had with Eric around, these 5-star ratings, and something that I felt like it didn't always capture is that there's something about the subjective experience. And like Jamie would probably argue against this, where there's like, everyone has a different experience by definition. It's subjective. But you're talking about this other, like almost intangible, like what makes a rock is this like millennia of position and how that affects it and where it is. And I just think that's cool. That's almost like, I just had never thought about the history that gets imbued to make it what it is and make it special. And there's a feeling there that we get by being around it.
Yeah, it's almost Zen. I don't even remember where it came from. Maybe it was like Barry Blanchard. It was an alpine climber. It was like the pursuit of the useless. Like you dedicate your life to this. It's the process, right? And in the end, it's just a rock on a hillside. But it's just, yeah, it's incredible. It's so much effort in that.
Sorry, I apologize for it. You said it's just a rock on the hillside, but I think of what it was like to be 8, and that's exactly what it was like hiking around. It's like, hey, look, there's a rock on the hillside. Let's go to it. Like that is a very young kid kind of like, hey, like you see that? Like, let's go there. I just had like some flash of doing that when I was a little boy.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, Dan Fitzgerald, said this to me one day. We're talking about getting older. And he's just like, we're older, but we're just big kids. And then he corrected himself. He's like, no, we're big kids. Yeah. Don't lose touch of that. I think that's right. That sense of adventure and exploration, that curiosity. Yeah. Don't lose track of that for anybody listening, because that's the drive. That might be, and it's very, like you said, it's subjective. That might be someone trying to climb the hardest boulder in the world. They're curious. Can they do it? That's an interesting process. Finding the best rock in the world, combining the two, like Jimmy's trying to do, or is doing crazy stuff out there. It's that childlike curiosity.
The fact that we're big kids now, I understand. I mean, I think it's great because it actually really encompasses what it, because I'm getting a bit older now too. And it makes you start ask yourself, like, am I grown up now? Like, what does it mean? Like, does that mean I don't get to do those things, or who am I now? And just that, oh no, I'm not a big kid. I'm a big kid. And it makes me wonder, now that you have a family, you have kids, congratulations, and an important job, and you're still a big kid. How do you understand what role adventure and the danger that it entails and the time it takes, the time it requires? How does that fit into your life now that you're, can I say your age, that you're 41 instead of 17,
Yeah.
Cause it's just very different than being a kid who just graduates college and gets a plane ride to China and runs around wild and doesn't think about getting kidnapped. I don't know why not people get kidnapped in China, but anyways, I think you know what I'm getting at. There's no grizzlies in China, but there's probably could still been danger.
Oh yeah. There's some wild things that can happen to you overseas. Yeah, there's a lot more responsibility, and I'm 44 now, so that's where that's where it starts to get really sappy. You start to really, like, you're thinking about the memoirs of your life kind of stuff, But yeah, that's right. It's there's a lot more responsibility now, but at the same time, there's this lifetime of experience. It's I'm a couple more years. That's 35 years. Majority of my life has been spent climbing. Most of that out in the wild places, looking for new things to climb. I can take that experience and kind of leverage it to be even more effective. The big trip I dreamed of for like 20 years in the winds that finally happened was after I had kids. You kind of realize how precious that time is, and at the same time, we kind of owe it to the next generation, our own kids, and their friends. They're going to be doing crazy things in their lifetime. It's wild to think about what they'll do, and we owe it to them to do the best. Be that role model. I want my kids to look back and be like, "Man, Dad was nuts, but I think we can do better." Yeah, yeah, and I want to show them these places. I'm so psyched. It was something my dad gave me growing up in those places. We grew up right outside the wilderness up there. I mean, every day was around the winds. Yeah, I owe that to my kids to share that experience for sure.
I grew up in the country on a farm and was pretty just let loose and wild. Just, hey, this is what a rattlesnake looks like. try not to get bit by one. Of course, that like makes you want to kind of play with them. And yeah, anyways, so something that you said really ties in again with this vision thing. And it's something I'm wrestling with too as I get older and really understanding what climbing is for me. And you said, you've been doing it for a long time, and your whole life really, and you're better at certain parts, and it helps you understand. Like, I'm always searching for what is climbing really for me, and it's like, oh, I like climbing hard. Like, yeah, if you told me I was on my path to V18, like, I'd be excited. Like, of course I want to climb hard. But the older I get, it's not that I wouldn't say that my desire to climb harder boulders, routes, whatever, diminishes. It's just that I recognize that it's one piece of the puzzle that I'm after, and some of it is camaraderie. I do love travel. I love getting scared and having adventure. And so, the longer you've been doing this thing, the more you're honing, like, what is this lens that I have on climbing? And this is why it's so cool talking to someone like you who has been doing it for a long time and you're unique. I mean, well, we're all unique, but there's not that many people who have developed thousands of routes. And it's cool that you're like, oh, like, I understand the landscape. I'm going to go here and do my thing. And like, just, it's cool that you have this clear idea that even is getting clearer as you get older too. This is my niche. This is where I'm continuing, you're continuing to excel at. And then, now, like you said, now you're finding yourself surrounded by the top climbers in the world, some of the most prolific developers in the world. And it's because you've, really honed what makes you special and what your lens on climbing is, the Alpine Fusion.
Yeah. Oh man. And it took me a long time to realize that, honestly. When I was young and I'd run up in the winds for an overnight with a bouldering pad, like the first Matoli's pad ever made, that far back, I just thought everybody was doing this. Like, if you're going to go bouldering, don't you just go up and climb boulders? And yeah, I didn't realize kind of how unique that niche was. There were like some early folks that reached out, like early 2000s. Jamie Emerson reached out. There wasn't Instagram. It was like literally like emails. We tracked down each other's email, and I kind of like, well, I don't know who this guy is. I'd heard of him in Rocky Mountain National Park. I'd been down there a few times, so you have something to compare to. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to blow this up. So I didn't realize, I guess I didn't realize what was going on. And it took a long time, it took a decade plus. And you just start to realize all these people are interested in what you're doing. They're interested in like the best things you've found, the best things you've climbed. It's not always about how hard it is. I've exceeded whatever I thought I was going to climb in my life in terms of grade. I would love to climb V17, but it's not, 44. Maybe that's not going to happen, but,
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. And then, you're just kind of looking around at who you've kind of, I don't want to say filtered out, but you looking around at who you're going out with on these trips, and who's reaching out for information, like, oh, that boulder looks incredible. And you realize it's kind of a group of some really talented people, really motivated people, that have dedicated their life to it. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess maybe I dedicated my life to this too, in some sort of meaningful way. And it's been a significant contribution. That's me being 44 and looking back on it and being like, oh, dang, I think I might have done something. Yeah.
Quick break while I tell you about today's sponsor. Thank you to all the patrons who help make this show possible. Join them so you can get episodes early before anyone else, and those episodes are ad-free. As a patron, you also get to submit questions for upcoming guests. The answers to those questions are only available to patrons. Follow the link in the show notes to join now. You also get access to a private Discord where you'll find me and other people who want to go from good to great. Okay, back to the pod. My little sub theme for the podcast is this idea of good to great. And a lot of times that takes the form of grades. Like, wow, how'd you climb V17? Because that's pretty darn impressive. There's a lot of people who climb good, but that was great. And so, it seems it takes a lifetime to, actually, I should say that one of the threads that I keep seeing is that what makes someone great is a very specific passion that has been honed over decades. And, that's kind of why I was psyched to talk to you, is it's like, well, this is Davin. Davin is a V17. He is the greatest developer, explorer, adventurer in this niche that you have. And that's something I always like to explain too, is it's like, you got to find your own passion. No one out there should be just like you or Dave Graham. Like, they got to find their own way. And so hearing stories from people who have taken it to a zenith, who have dedicated their life to it, is always fascinating, man, because it's just like, when I started bouldering, I did not just go out into the forest by myself with a crappy pad where there was grizzlies and climb on random boulders. What was it like? What was climbing like not having guidebooks around? Like, how did you what drew you to the specific boulders? Like, was it ever difficult? Yeah. Like, just what was it like bouldering with no knowledge of any of the lines because you were the one that was bringing them into creation?
Man, I I guess I don't remember thinking about it when I first started doing that. I think I think I just kind of realized you kind of wake up in a dream, right? And that's like I'm out in the woods bouldering in the middle of the Wind Rivers. So I think it was like probably all the way back to childhood. I mean, I was 4 years old growing up in Torrey Valley, Wyoming, which is the kind of the north end of the winds. The big mountains are there. That's how you get to the glaciers. I think I was just kind of always doing it, and just adding chalk, shoes, and a pad was the next step. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question honestly, because it's just I just woke up and I was doing it. I was like just obsessed from day one.
You know, it's I I think it's always interesting for me to hear this kind of era of climbing because although I started about 30 years ago, I was probably one of the first gym kids, gym rats. You know, I got taken to a gym by my gymnastics teacher. He was like, "Hey, you might like this," and I did. And you know, we went outside a bunch too. I did a lot of climbing outside, but I it's just such a different portal into the sport. Not bad, not good, just is. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this open landscape and even seeing rock and getting on it versus someone being like, "Hey, see these bolts? Like this is where we go. We go up this line." You know, it's a I don't want to say it's a constrained experience, but it's a very handheld experience. And to be fair, I was only 10 years old and I needed my handheld.
Yeah,
But you know, I love the adventure that you experienced growing up. It's so cool.
I think it's different for everybody, right? So like this wind strip we talked about, as that comes together, you're up there with a group of people, and you realize every person has had a different path to get there, different background, and everybody's going to have a different path after you leave that place. But for those few days, we're all there with the same thing in mind, and that's such a great thing about climbing. Every one of our paths is different. Our motivations are different. Our obsessions are different. But we're all kind of striving for that contentment that I was talking about.
The contentment you're talking about where you're tired and hungry and
Yeah.
scared and in deep. Yeah. Do you have any wild experiences that are what we call them type 3 fun where other people think it's fun to hear about, but it's not even fun for you to like, you don't even want to go back and relive it. I can't help. I hear all these. I was talking to Jimmy and I was like, "Oh, that sounds so cool." But then you lost me when you said grizzlies, because there's something deep in me about not getting eaten. I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
It's just me. And yeah, I'm just curious about some of those more, what it's like out there deep, man.
I mean, the two experiences that really stick in my mind among quite a few kind of even things with close calls, honestly, where you're just out there like, man, this might not work. The hike with Rami and Jimmy was just truly insane. That was just like it had to work. There was no room for error, and it was almost casual. Jimmy's insane, by the way. He's just like not phased by danger at all. Like this just like mindset. We are going to do this. If something goes wrong, we'll figure it out. But it's not going to go wrong because we're going to do this. So that was pretty crazy. That was a huge hike through the winds. Basically had nothing with us. I mean, a water filter. We like split half of a PB and J. It was 26 plus miles. Went clear up over a mountain, down a whole valley. The rivers were flooded. It was just absolutely insane day hike. I'll never do that again. That's one like in bouldering lore. That's the biggest, I think, day hike that's ever been done. Looking for boulders, and we found some of the best boulders in the world that day. Recently went on a trip with Jamie Emerson and Nathaniel Davidson to Alaska. We went to the Brooks Range last year. That's something we talked about for a few years and just weren't comfortable with it. And this is like kind of a very, very small group of people that are most comfortable with being really uncomfortable in a faraway place. And it took us a while to get psyched and finally committed. Like, what, you know, nothing's guaranteed. Let's go do this. Well, we're still kind of young, like, can still survive it. And yeah, went up to Alaska. We intended to do kind of a high route and see all the high peaks in the Brooks Range and look for boulders. The weather was horrendously bad. And so we altered that trip and instead kind of circumnavigated the tallest point in the Brooks Range. And that was that, man. It started as like, let's go look for boulders out here. And it got really big really quick. Those two guys totally dependent, you know, on each other. Drive up to Alaska or fly up to Alaska, drive up to Coldfoot, get flown in by a bush plane. You are dropped in one of the most remote places in the world. Absolutely huge mountains. And we had something like 12 days of food, like over 100 miles to walk. We wanted to go up and look at boulders at the base of these glaciers in a couple locations. It just rained every day. There were bears everywhere. It was bear world. Growing up with bears, I was still intimidated going to Alaska, and every fear I had about bears was realized in Alaska. Like we just got straight charged the last night coming out. You know, we had a few days left and we got a message from the bush pilot that we had like 24 hours to get to our pickup point. Otherwise, this huge winter storm's coming in. If we can't get to the pickup point, we should prepare for up to 10 days of self-sufficiency, you know. We'd already done this heinous day, like 12 plus miles through these gorges coming down out of this giant mountain. And we're just dead tired. At like 7 at night, you're eating dinner. Just start brewing coffee, grab some extra calories, and, you know, do like 12 or 15 more miles through the night, you know, to get to our pickup place. It was insane. And we saw like a few boulders. And Jamie was right. Like in the middle of that trip, we're like sitting on this riverbank in the rain, you know, again, cooking lunch in the rain. And he looks over and he's like, damn, Davin, you're not here for the boulders. You're here for the mayhem. And it's like the moment I like paused on that trip and realized, yeah, we might not find a boulder anywhere on this trip. And I'm still 100% satisfied with this particular trip, with this outing. That's the farthest I think I've gone to date, for sure. For sure is. That was as far into getting uncomfortable as I've been in a long while. Yeah.
Yeah, getting charged by bears in Alaska and hiking 30 miles in a day to hopefully catch a ride out of there. Those people up there are built different. Well, I shouldn't say that. It sounds like growing up in Wyoming, you're built different too. I used to think I was tough because I grew up on a farm. You know, it's like I definitely just am used to some things that people like my wife grew up in suburbia. You know, she's just isn't so comfortable with just being outside, and that's a heck of a story. I gotta ask, what should I do if I get charged by a bear? You got any tips there?
You know, I think, I mean, number one, that was like mental durability, right? I mean, we had all thought about it a lot. We were pretty uneasy about some aspects of that trip because of bears. So you just kind of like think about it enough that you just become you accept it. Like, we're going to probably have a bear incident. So yeah, prepare ahead of time. Think about it, you know, visualize it. Carry bear spray, man. we were ready to go with bear spray for sure. We were going to hose that thing down, and it did help. It was at the end of the trip. We were tired, exhausted, scared. And it was just like, we are going home. We're not missing that plane. We're not going to live in bear world for 10 days through a blizzard. Like, we're going home. And that helped a lot. Yeah. You just decide. I think, man, that durability, that's guys climbing really hard boulders too. That mental durability, just deciding this is going to happen.
Yeah, my dad used to have this saying about the people he hung out with and his buddies. He would say, they're the kind of guys you want in a foxhole with you. And, that's a reference to war, actually. But it's like, who do you want next to you when the bear charges? And by the way, there is no such thing as a bear incident. I don't know if like incident, like I just don't think that really covers in my head. Sorry to just dwell on bears so much, but I don't know. It just gets me. I have these basic fears around sharks and bear. I don't like the idea of getting eaten. So for me, when I hear this, it just ratchets up the danger to, or the emotional impact and that durability of being in a low stress, or sorry, I shouldn't say low stress, in a high stress environment for weeks, and just feeling that kind of danger, there's something to that, where it's one thing to have something happen in an afternoon. It's another to live in a world like that for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for taking us to bear country without actually having to go.
Yeah. And now that I realize we're like talking about this in the context of bouldering, I feel like maybe there's some insanity. I'm reflecting on this as we're talking about it. It's like, man, what are we doing? Yeah. I mean, you can only imagine.
I know what you're doing. It's awesome.
You can only imagine what our next plans are with, absolute nonsense like that going on. That's now I feel crazy.
I'll ask you that later, what the next plan is. But you pointed out that all boulders kind of go through this process of, or maybe not process, they're in these different stages. There's discovery, development, and confirmation. And I think a lot of people live in this confirmation area, which is kind of like, well, I did the Ironman Traverse and I was like the 5,000th person to have done it. And, you're leaning more into this discovery portion. And so while it sounds crazy to some people to, fly and spend weeks and not get to find a ton of good boulders, like sometimes you kind of strike out. Well, it happens sometimes where I fly to South Africa and I don't do the climb. I was unable to repeat the climb that I literally flew across the world to do. And so, dude, happens to, it's, how do you explain to your mom? Yeah, I just flew 30 hours and spent tens of thousands of dollars and I didn't repeat this thing that is just some random piece of rock anyways. So don't feel so bad. At least you got adventure on your side. But now that you pointed out that kind of different categories of bouldering, I just kind of want to hear from you. You've been involved in all parts of it, and just kind of like, why do some places blow up and get really popular from the discovery and the development? Or maybe I should let you describe those three different phases first: the discovery, development, and confirmation.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing to talk about. Like, so I've always looked at bouldering. It's 3 phases. There's someone has to find it. I've spent a lot of time doing that. That's just the discovery phase. Development, like what are those areas you've discovered that you come back to? You're going back to with your crew. You're chalking it up. You're building landings, doing everything we do. And then the last one, is confirmation. What of those areas that have been found that were worthy enough to develop, become confirmed? What ascend into this kind of this view of the climbing community and is accepted as a legitimate area? And it's hard to tell what defines the categories sometimes. It's hard to know where these areas will go. So there's total areas we spent years in. We discovered them, we developed them. Some of the Wyoming crew, some of the larger crew at large might be down in Colorado. There's plenty of areas we chalk boulders. Man, spent so much energy developing, and they're just growing lichen again. Like I wait for that post on the gram of like, oh, look at this sick boulder. And it's like, well, 20 years ago, that was a bouldering area. So it's been rediscovered. I think that confirmation phase is that's where most people go. They buy the guidebook or they get directions. They've seen the problem. There's probably a beta video they can pull up. And how those get sorted is probably multifaceted, right? There's those famous problems, I feel like the areas we've gone to in the Tetons or the winds that are still there, these wilderness endeavors, it's days to get out there. or days to be successful out there. Those have been confirmed, right? You see things that are some of the best boulders in the world. There's other boulders out there that we'll never go back to again, maybe not for like generations.
I just wonder if there's going to be a whole generation that does go out and climbs these, that just sees something like the Revenant and just it becomes, I think crowded would be the wrong word, but I gotta tell you, like the buttermilks are kind of like the place near me that's gotta be the most popular. It was not popular. I mean, bouldering was not, no one was there. It's like, oh, these are like too tall. Like, why would you even climb on the, like, it just wasn't even, I mean, there was people who were doing it, but it was not a thing to do. And now you go on Thanksgiving weekend and there's hundreds of cars and you think, what the heck happened? And so I always just wonder, what is the thing that clicks that people say, this is where I want to be. Like, this is the special one. And, so I wonder, like, what's the next place that's going to be in vogue? Because you do see places, I mean, even really popular places, I feel like Waco kind of fell out of vogue all of a sudden. You think like Waco's incredible. Like, how did that fall out of vogue? But there's ups and downs. And so it's like, why do these places become the next thing? Like, why is all the focus go on the confirmation? The limelight hits them. I don't know.
I think it's how attainable is that experience for the greater population of climbers. And if they see something like recently in the buttermilks, there's been some pretty wild problems getting done. And that's pretty amazing. That area has been established. It was discovered and developed a long time ago. So it's getting this kind of refresh, the confirmation steps kind of happening again with these new hard, really big lines getting done. Those guys are doing crazy things in the buttermilks. And it's attainable. So you can go see those things and then climb the boulder next door and kind of gain that experience. You see the video of these new things getting done, and then you can go be there and experience it. I think as climbers, we want to see what's cutting edge. We want to see what's the most beautiful thing. What is the best climb? And no matter what your level in climbing might be grade wise, you can go and attain that, right? You can go see that. So I feel like that's where it's at now. That's probably a lot of social media, accessibility to information. Maybe that's what's driving it now. Some of it's legend, and the lore of it. Like, you'll hear about something incredible getting put up, and maybe there's not a lot of information at first. I think that's cool too. It starts to spur this adventure sense in the general climbing community. It's like a treasure hunt.
Honestly, man, that's kind of what I want to do here. Like, I want someone to hear this, have seen the video on Mellow about the Revenant, heard you guys talk about it, and be like, I want to know what that hike is like. I want to grab those grips. I want to see if it's possible for me. I also do wonder about gear, and I guess it's like technology. I think the buttermilks became more accessible when more pads became available. And, pads they were expensive and they weren't that good. And doing something like, a really tall boulder back then when you had 2 pads, it's like, oh, you have 3 pads. Like, how many times did you see 3 pads under something? So, it's like, what if there's new technology with nets or super light pads that can be inflated? I don't know, just making stuff up, and it makes it more accessible. Who knows what's possible?
Yeah, that changes the landscape, of what's been developed for sure. It's probably going to change significantly how we do develop. So there's a group of us, a small group of us, thinking about how to adapt gear now for these big trips, like new pad designs, new gear designs. It's getting wild, yeah. And I think that's going to open the door. So some of these more remote things can be repeated. Not everyone's going to go and spend 5 years establishing a boulder. They're not going to spend 5 years figuring out how to get out into the wild. What's the best trail? How do we bring pads in? How do we support this with a crew long enough to get something meaningful done? People aren't going to do that for 5 years, but yeah, with some basic modifications, and And who knows, right? I feel like every climbing generation kind of looks back at the up and coming kids and kind of like questions it a little, like what are they capable of? Man, I hope it'd be amazing for somebody to go in to the winds one day and even do that high mark, day trip it and flash, or if not flash, do the Revenant in a few tries and hike out the same day. Like someone's going to do that sometime in the future.
Well, I mean, just by you saying these things like the high mark, like just coming up with that challenge, puts it out there. Like how many miles could I go in? Yeah, I always try not to. It's so tough to predict what the future is going to be like, and when you look at the past and you see traditional climbing, and then bolts seemed ridiculous. I mean, there was fist fights over stuff like this, and hang dogging versus always ground up ascents. I mean, now doing high balls by wrapping down them and testing them on a rope first, like it all seemed like ridiculous or blasphemy. And it's a topic I'm always interested in, because just as I get older, it's so tempting to diminish what is new, knee pads or something. And it's short-sighted, because it's like, oh, what if someone takes this technology and then uses it to go into the deep backcountry and surface is something that was never possible before. And so I just love that kind of forward looking. And so I'm curious if you have any tips or advice to people who are looking to go out into the backcountry or go explore deep. Like how did you develop that skill set, and what have you learned along the way that you can maybe pass along to them?
I think the place to start is where you're at. I mean, if that adventure side of this sport is interesting, you just got to start going. I get questions a lot. I know Jamie gets a lot, since he's like seen all of Colorado at this point. Like where should we start? I have people who want to become developers who are actually developers. They're starting to find a few new things in this area, and they ask, where should I start? I'm not going to give you a map of everything I found or everything I haven't found, because I want to go out to those places I haven't seen yet. I want to see them. It's not competitive. It's like, maybe it is. I don't know. I want to see it first. Maybe the best thing in the world is there. And that feeling of coming around the corner and seeing that is amazing. So if you seek that, if this up and coming generation wants to do that, start where you're at. There's a lot of boulders. There's a lot of adventure close to home. And I mean, anywhere you live. I was just in Pennsylvania a few weeks ago and went out to, ancient bouldering area and felt that sense of adventure. That was new to me. And, had the sense somewhere nearby is another boulder in Pennsylvania that hasn't been found. And I felt the motivation, that twinge of like, I'm going to hike this forest and find that. Yeah.
When you went out to the winds and start going on these adventures, I mean, this sounds like a dumb question that I'm saying it, but is there any trails, like, like how far out there are you? Because people do hike in places. Like I just was up at this area called Heaven above Bishop, and you drive way up, and it's beautiful. But honestly, even though it's like a big drive and then like a big hour hike, it's actually like, I don't want to say it's roadside, but it's trail side. Like people have been walking past there forever because it's this beautiful alpine lake. And yeah, like, I don't know, like how far out are you going from what is established kind of known area for humans in general?
Yeah. Oh man. So, I mean, like where the Revenant sits, and I'm gonna, try to sell it again. The Lost Eagle, that 8B, might be the best 8B in the world. It's like 4 or 5 miles of trail, and pretty chill trail. People day hike up to the end of that trail all the time, and then it's like a hard stop. Like you hit this forest where this river kind of cuts off everything. And it's like deadfall mayhem. There's boulders all over. There's some steep slabs and talus you navigate. So then you're, 4 or 5 miles of trail. And then it's like 4 or 5 miles of pretty heinous bushwhacking, to be honest. Like that's probably one of the more difficult approaches done to date in bouldering. That's what took us so long, was figuring out how, can we even get pads up here? Um, it's one thing to day hike it and another, to go up and live up there for a week or two. So yeah, 8 to 10 miles for those boulders. You could go the long way around the back, which is a trail most of the way, but you're doubling the mileage basically. Some of the farthest things out there are like two full days of hiking in the winds. You get out under Mount Helen Glacier or Knife Point. There's some boulders I put up when I was young, way up there, and that's 2 days. But technology is changing. Touching back on how do people start to look for these boulders or start to begin exploring. Most of what I follow on Instagram are FKT, fastest known time athletes, and fly fishermen. In the backgrounds of their photos, I have found so many boulders. And they have that same obsession. Like they're willing to hike for 2 days to go catch a golden trout in the winds, And behind that picture of them holding that golden trout, you're like, that's a boulder I need to go see. Yeah. So you gotta dig in and like, kind of embrace some of these other obsessions out there in the world. But
that's hilarious. Can you imagine being a fly fisherman? You're like, you get a message, you're like, hey, where was that? Like, yeah. And they're like, I'm not going to tell you, that's my secret spot. You're like, oh, I don't care about fishing, just that boulder behind you. And they go, what do you care about the rock? And you can just be like, hey, what do you care about that freaking fish?
Yeah. Oh man. And the fastest known time athletes, these guys running, ultra marathons through high mountains, they usually share, you're like, I saw your last post, obviously some beautiful talus field in the background. Where is that? They'll usually tell you. Part of that's I think they want to challenge you too. Like, they did it in 18 hours. Can you go find a boulder in 18 hours?
Maybe this is, I was not a Boy Scout, so maybe this is an easy question, but yeah, how you just like navigate these big mountain ranges? Like what technology are you using? Are you just busting out a compass? Like whenever I go, I was always blown away when I first started going up to Rocky Mountain National Park. And I grew up in the Sierras, and Sierras are big. I was like, wow, the Rockies are big. And just you look out and you just see, I don't want to say hill, peak after peak after peak. And I just imagine, whoa, how do you even really navigate that well when you're in deep? And it's important that you navigate it well, because otherwise you might be in trouble.
Yeah. It's getting familiar with the landscape, right? So, I cheated it because I grew up in the winds, and you just kind of know when to go up a valley, when to go down a valley. Nowadays on your phone, man, it's amazing. I cheat now, and I just, pull up the map on my phone and see where my pin is wandering, but yeah, I always have a map for backup for sure. And you just get used to plan ahead of time for sure. And I say that having done like most of these hikes, it's kind of maybe not as well planned as I have advertised, or, you picture these trips being, you sit down with a map, you plan your food out. Honestly, a lot of it is like you show up at the trailhead at noon, cause you had to drive halfway across Wyoming to get there. You like make sure you have like a wool cap in case you get benighted, and then like throw a sandwich in the bag and just haul ass, like just hike as fast as you can. And you might see like, oh, this valley I just walked past, there's boulders up there. You totally make it up, honestly. Yeah, most of the time, I think, to be honest. You have a plan, but at least me, I feel like people like Jamie are way more calculated. Like he'll know exactly which boulders, super meticulous. Like, man, a lot of those hikes in the winds, especially when Jimmy started showing up, you're just like doing just kind of random nonsense. Like, let's check that talus out and then that talus. You just kind of make it up as you go. Yeah.
It does sound like that's kind of what it takes, though. Like there's an element of picking a lot of lotto tickets and just hoping that you find the one. I love that. I just love this idea of you turn the corner and you see the boulder. And I've done a bit of exploring, and there always is this urge to like, but what's over that hill? Like, but what's next? And yeah, we call it chasing the dragon. That's
yeah.
So, Dav, I know you're also a guest lecturer at the university, and it sounds like you talk about climbing history, but you also had this statement of how'd you put like climbers and becoming aware of the ownership within a landscape. I just kind of wanted to touch on what that means. Like, what are climbers' relation to the landscape, and what kind of stewardship does that require on our part?
Yeah, that's a important area of thought. Actually, we should talk about. Yeah, so I speak to undergraduates. College students are just starting out in. It might be outdoor recreation, it might be land use. Whatever they're going into to study, and I guest lecture on this concept of ownership. So as we participate in a landscape, as we go out climbing every day, and this could be discovery, development, confirmation. This could be anywhere in the process. Just us as humans going out and spending our time climbing rocks. We develop a sense of ownership. The climbers very, very strongly view climbing areas as ours. We're the ones that are spending the time there. Who else identifies with Bishop? We talked about Bishop, as this place that's going off again. Who else identifies that as kind of their land, right? It's climbers. Even these far off places we're going, other people aren't hanging out in talus fields in the back of the Wind Rivers or Alaska or wherever they're at. So you gain this sense of ownership. You become comfortable and familiar with the land. It is spiritual, even for those of us who are just like, there's a lot of climbers that are just going out with the guidebook. They want to tick that hard boulder. They've had their eyes on, they've trained all winter for, but they're in there interacting. They're grabbing those holds. They're, taking note of the weather. And with that definitely comes with ownership comes stewardship. It's a big issue in climbing. Obviously, we all treat it differently. You'll see some climbers just driving off-road to get roadside to a boulder. You'll see others picking up every little piece of trash to keep it kind of clean and natural. So we all kind of play a role there. But I think as a group, being aware that we really are the owners of that landscape, and whoever has the deed to the land, that I think that's a different story. But we're the ones connected to it. So we have to choose how we deal with that connection, definitely moving forward.
It really resonates with me, this feeling of, I guess, ownership, where I really get it in Yosemite, where there's so many tourists that, God, there's some statistic like 95% of tourists never go within 100 feet of their car in Yosemite, which is horrifying. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say it. Good for them for at least appreciating Yosemite, but you just meet these people and you're like, you guys aren't in Yosemite. You're driving through Yosemite. This window that you're seeing through your car is like a TV screen for you. Like you're not here. And just when you sleep, I shouldn't say it because it's illegal. When you go and you sleep in the talus boulder, like hidden from the rangers, you just kind of get this like intimacy that you're like, oh, I know, this kind of feels like home. And so that really resonates with me. And I'm curious to understand more of kind of the ethics that you might push forward as someone who's been a big part of all those three different stages we've talked about. Like when we build, so personally, I'll just say my belief, I like the look of chalk on stone. I like a touch of a landing being built. I love seeing a Karen out in the middle of nowhere kind of saying like, hey, you're on the right track. I feel differently about big cement paved paths out in the middle of nowhere. But like, how do we understand this line behind like humans are there? And I think that actually makes things look a little more beautiful, but there's probably a line there that we shouldn't cross. Do you have any insights on that?
Man, and that's a blurry line for sure. Again, that's going to be person to person, but I mean, I have bouldering areas I found on my own that I haven't told my closest friends about. There's boulders I've gone past that I'm not willing to put chalk on. You just see it sitting there like in an old growth forest in the Tetons, and you're just like, that's the most beautiful boulder I've ever seen. I'm not going to touch that one. That changes. Sometimes you go back and build a landing and start to chalk things up. And you're right. There's boulders you have to brush chalk on it. Like holy shit, that's the best sequence I've ever seen on rock. I'm going to climb that like right now. And it does. It looks really good with a nice landing in chalk. Yeah. It's so subjective, right? It's such an individual thing. I think we have to consider strongly what makes the most sense in terms of developing these areas, and in terms of how maybe others start to view it. And I mean others in the climbing community. You're talking about tourists going through Yosemite Valley, and I don't know, maybe I sound like an asshole. I don't really care how they view climbing, but other climbers, if I'm taking someone up to the Laramie Range this weekend, I want the deck to look really good, right? Or if it's a new area, what's the best way to like come in and build the site? Like, how do you bring in the crew and show them a new area to get them hooked on it? Yeah. What are those things you're keeping in your back pocket? Cause maybe you're not ready to do that yet.
Geez, man, I talk about ownership mentality. You made that joke about how I want to make the deck look nice, but that's so cool that when you think about bringing, like maybe you're bringing someone to show them an area, it's like, okay, I want this approach to, have great vistas. And then like when we drop down into the valley, just like that whole experience, because this is again, it's what we're getting at this whole podcast, is that there can be more to climbing than just this one move on this rock or plastic hold. It's like, it's that whole approach and experience. So I like that. And I always have this thing where maybe this is just me, again, subjective. I think that there's something beautiful about a bit of a human trace. Like there's something enticing about, I think boulders often look more beautiful with a touch of chalk because you kind of see the rail. You kind of feel it links you with the boulder in a way that when you climb, you are interacting with nature. It's how I tell myself I'm better than this tourist that's just walking through. It's like, no, I'm connecting. I'm altering myself to be with nature. But then there's a give and take there. I'm altering nature to be with me. And so it's like this subtle play where it's like, I want to transform nature a bit, but there is this sometimes egregious things that happen where you go like, oh man, like, yeah, I don't know. It can go too far. And I don't really know what that line is, but I feel like you know it when you see it.
Yeah. You know it when you see it. I don't know what it is either. I think I failed trying to describe it, You do, when you see it. There's an area, we call Old Neverland Hill. My friend Brian Vanskill named it that when he first discovered it. And, really, really good boulders. And I remember that hill the first day we hiked up to it and found this thing we called the wood grain wall, and found a boulder up above it. That was, probably the best panel of rock I'd seen at that time. And, Paul Robinson put out the Uncharted Lines, and a lot of those boulders are in that. He didn't really give a location at the time. We weren't comfortable with that. But those are Old Neverland Hill. And now people are going there. There's chalk on those boulders all the time, rightfully so. Phenomenal climbs. Wood and Jesus, Indian in the Cup and the Cupboard. Those are two V13s that got done on the hillside that are as good as anything on the Front Range, for sure. Anything in America, phenomenal problems. And, people are kind of feeling it out. So I've seen that hillside change from this thing we kept secret, had no trail whatsoever, into this thing now where I feel like I need to fix the landings up. I want to brush chalk on the holds, like as people come up from the Front Range, I want it to be defined. And I do, it's exciting. It's like, man, I go back and forth on, but it's exciting. It's like people are interested in this. They should be. We just had a really good session a few weeks ago out there with some of the local climbers here in Laramie, and it was really cool to climb like in an established area. Um, one I've seen come from the first day we found it to now established, but yeah, those boulders look really good with chalk.
I love that you're like, I want to go clean it up and make it even nicer. And that makes me wonder what's the relationship between discovery, developing, and doing it for your own love and packaging up and passing it along to the climbing community as a whole. I mean, I know a lot of your passion comes from the thing in itself, but I'm guessing that there is some relation to helping, creating experience for other climbers around you.
Yeah, I've come to realize that maybe I'm responsible for sharing those experiences now. These areas I've spent so much time in. Brought these talented athletes to. I do now realize that these are experiences we packaged. Man, it's wild to think about. I didn't think of it when I was young. I was just doing it. Like, I'm just going to go find the best boulder I can. I'm going to climb the hardest I can, put up the best things I can. And yeah, that's changed a little. I think I do reflect on it now. Like, as we're in the winds, and I keep talking about that trip because it's such a good example. You think about, how am I going to roll that rock over so it's presentable, or how will this come out in the final film that Nathaniel put together? How is this presented? Because people are going to be so psyched, they're going to be so interested in this, and yeah, I think you want others to come out and have these experiences. So I'm really conscious of it now, for sure.
I wonder if Fred Nicole and his photographer and what he was doing, I wonder if he was conscious when he was about that kind of impact when he was young and doing things, because I don't, I wonder if Chris Sharma knew what he was doing when he did realize it, biography, if he understood like the impact that those little bits of media have, and the attention and care to detail. Like, I'm glad that you recognize that now. And I just wonder how many people recognize it early on in their career and do it consciously, like this is a gift.
Yeah. I see it. Those guys probably didn't think about it. I didn't. It was like, you just want to do it. It's that obsession thing. You're so psyched to just go out. It's so personal, climbing. Fred and Chris and those guys were climbing what they wanted to climb. There's always the sponsor thing. If you change the angle of that, does the boulder look better? Is that a pair of shoes I get? So you see some of that, but still behind all that are people doing what they set out to do, that passion, that thing they want to do. So no matter how you package it or how you present it, if it goes in a film or something, if it's that iconic image that blows up the scene for a while, still the background of that is just this crazy drive, this obligation to yourself to do what you set out to do. Yeah.
And you're still doing it. Yeah. On that note of just the drive, for no other reason than to follow that drive, I did a podcast with Matty Hong, and he had been in Mallorca climbing with Chris Sharma, and he got the second ascent of some climb, and it was like 10 years after Chris had done it. And he just said it blew his mind that Chris was just out there by himself, really climbing unbelievably hard. And I've done a lot of deep water soloing, and it's wild, man. Like, it's an experience. The ocean is loud. You don't know if it's okay to fall from here. Is it, falling off of 15 feet is okay? Is falling off of 60 feet okay? Like, I don't know. No one's done it before. And just the fact that he was out there doing it. And to be fair, too, quite a long time after Chris became Chris and didn't need to do anything for sponsors. He's just being Chris. And so, I love you guys out there just doing the fucking thing and blazing the trail for the rest of the world to follow, and then hopefully split off and do their own special thing with it, however it inspires them. So yeah, I mean, like literally, David, how cool would it be if in 20 years someone puts out a video and they're like, oh, it was this podcast Davin was telling us about getting charged by a grizzly. And so I went out there and I just had to see what that was like. And now there's, the Revenant 2.0 in Alaska,
Yeah. Yeah. I hope it builds, man. I hope there's an interest. For sure. I think, everyone's their own person in climbing, especially, but, some things take longer than others to gain hold, I think, and kind of interest the community at large. I think, going super far in the middle of nowhere to climb a boulder is starting to catch on, honestly. I get a lot of questions about it. People want pins. They ask, which mountain ranges are you thinking about going? People want to go. I get a lot of requests, like, next time you go on a big trip, can I go? So it's building. It's definitely building. That's cool to see. Definitely, it's.
So what big trip is in the works now for you? Do you have your sights set on anything?
I got a long list.
Oh, if you can share, you don't have to name the coordinates, but
I won't drop a pin or anything. So Jamie and Emerson and I were just talking about this last weekend. We were out. We have some spots in Montana. I think the biggest talus field in North America is up there. It is. A lot of us have that pin. So we can check that out. That's an easy one though. We there's areas, backwoods cascades. I know there's guys out there looking, but I mean, like, really some unexplored valleys up there. Up in Canada, I've got pins, coastal pins. So again, following not fly fishermen this time, but like professional fishermen on the ocean. And off the coast of Nova Scotia and northern Canada, up in the Arctic, there's boulders. You see these boulders on the beaches of these places, and they're just like apartment-sized, swirly, nice, sitting on like a black sand beach. You see them in the background of these fishing blogs and these pictures these guys are posting from like lobstering and stuff off the coast. I'd like to go up there. And Alaska's incomplete, man. We didn't. There's a lot of boulders we didn't see, so we're gonna go back there at some point. We probably need another year to like get that psych back, but definitely go back up there. And honestly, man, tons in the backyard. Talked about it earlier, that everything in the backyard here, there's a huge talus field we found just last year. It was Jimmy and Carlo, Jamie, myself, Roman was there. We went up just the backside of the park, and it's like a huge talus field, is swirly. It's like Chaos Canyon again, It's places in the Winds, Bighorns, Laramie Range, places in Idaho, Utah, and it goes on and on. But yeah.
I keep hearing Utah. I heard you. I've heard that a bunch. I'm just waiting for the next Joe's Valley to be allowed to be, confirmed or developed more. This makes me wonder. It sounds like you have 100 lifetimes worth of developing to do. And so what do you do when you find this amazing place and you just think to yourself, this is in the middle of nowhere, Canada, but it's world class. Like, but I'm not going to come back for another 5 years. And I'm just one person. Like, do you have a little journal that's like, okay, like, no, it's your will. I bequeath to these people this pin of world class, but I was unable to take the time to develop it.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a decision tree. It's like a call tree. Like, first call, like Jamie Emerson, he's going to go anywhere in the world, right? Jimmy, because he's just insane. If you show him a picture of something amazing, he's going to go see it. I'm going to start with those two guys. And then there's a bunch of us.
That's a good crew.
Then there's a bunch of us. Nathaniel Davidson, he's always up for, it doesn't matter how insane it is. He's going to he's going to have an interest. He has that experience too. They're that close knit, the guys you can trust the most, and honestly are just like willing to do something totally insane. So those are the first steps, right? You get out there, find it, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to call like these three guys.
There's all these videos of people going and doing random big wall ascents where, they're in, I don't know, some island around Greenland or something, and they just have seen a big wall. And so it doesn't strike me as that wild to say, there were some boulders in Nova Scotia. We, took a boat out there and we bouldered there. So I don't know. I think I wouldn't be surprised if in 50 years they go, oh, these guys, Davin, pioneered this Alpine Fusion, or maybe you and your group. It's like, no, this was an obvious thing to go do. It's like taking the Alpine tactics and applying it to beautiful boulders in places that maybe weren't right there. So
yeah,
very cool. Very cool, man.
Yeah. And there's other guys doing this too. You see some, man, I've seen some crazy pictures lately of stuff in the Himalayas and South America. I mean, what Matt's doing down in Arizona, Matt Gentile, out there in the middle of nowhere doing some stuff. So but yeah, it's a small group. And I think we're getting to the point now where maybe we want to set a high bar. Like now that we know it's possible and we can get out there, we have the people we can trust for these things. It's probably, I think climbers, whether they're competitive or not, are competitive, and we're pushing ourselves. We want to see how hard we can push ourselves now with this idea. So we're going to modify some gear. We're going to train a little. Like, man, I do insane amounts of hiking training, which I never pictured in my life. I have to like cycle 20-mile hikes in with going to the climbing gym now to be able to do this. And that's all going to come together. And I think we want to set a really high bar. Like, I don't know if I want the next generation to just piss on everything we've done. I think I want like 3 or 4 generations down the road, to be like, damn, these guys set a high bar. I think that's what we're hoping to do at this point.
Yeah, you already set a pretty damn high bar with the Revenant in that picture. That I want to say, was that iconic picture by Nathaniel?
It was.
Was that his picture?
It was, man. He captured that beautifully.
So all I ask is that you guys make some videos and some pictures and just give us a little taste, as well as give that next generation something to say, oh, you think that's cool? I'll show you what's cool.
Yeah. I've been telling Nathaniel that he can't avoid any of these trips now. He's got to document this, and people want to see it. Yeah.
Please, we beg you. There's a side of me that wants to say like, hey, Davin, could I come along? Like, I can hike 3 miles, I'm pretty sure, but it is something that you kind of have to earn your way into the crew. And it's not just, there's a reason you have to earn it. It's because it is serious. Just like you don't really want, I personally don't like some random person belaying me or spotting me. It's a similar thing. Like, I don't want some random person in Nova Scotia with me. You got to build that up slowly but surely. And you've spent your whole life doing it. And I know Jamie has earned his place and then some.
Yeah.
So any tips for, would-be adventurers? Like, if you're thinking about flying to Afghanistan, I don't know, like, what would be your advice to 20-year-old Davin?
Man, I do have pins in Afghanistan too. Hopefully that gets better soon. But I think the best advice, and I've listened to your podcast a lot, especially lately. So I think the advice is real similar: to follow your heart, like really do what is most meaningful for you. And I realized when you're 20, you might not know what that is. I sure as hell didn't. So I just kind of did what I felt like I needed to do. You kind of look at your life as a climber, like, maybe I want to be the best climber in the world, or maybe I want to put up the most beautiful thing in the world. And maybe that's not as true to what actually shakes out. I will never climb V17. That'd be amazing. That'd be so amazing. But I'm 100% content in the path I took following that passion. I continue to feel it every single day, absolutely obsessed with this life. So I would do that, and try a lot of different things to find that, for sure. You gotta just get out there and try, and just go out and do what you set out to do and see if you like it.
I just love that advice, because I'm sure you had high goals for yourself at 20 and climbing. Well, V17 didn't even exist back then. I'm not even sure V16 did either.
Yeah. We had V14 back then, and there were like a couple of those in the world.
and they were all Fred Nicole problems.
Yeah.
And I just think it's interesting when you look back on your life, and just like I read that little quote back to you where you said you look around the room and you're like, holy shit, I'm in the room with the people that 20-year-old Davin would have really thought were really cool. And the way you got there was by doing the thing that you loved, and you're not some like cool master plan, just like, okay, let's do this. And it's not going to be in all of our genetics to be the first one to climb V18. It's just not. But that doesn't mean you won't reach the pinnacle of the sport, because there's a lot of different ways to be at the pinnacle, and you got to find the one that is true to you.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it, man. I don't know.
Well, it might turn out you're a V18 hiker, right? And you can climb a V12 at the end of that hike. And that's pretty fucking cool too. That's amazing.
I think you are that dumb. I think you do that.
At 44, it might be V8 out there at this point, but yeah. But I mean, that's right. Get out there and follow your heart. Give it a hard push.
I mean, something that adventure brings to the whole equation too is that when I think of my favorite climbs that I've done in my life, they've not been the most difficult ones, but the experience, everything that surrounded them, there's these moments that stick out in my head very, very strongly, vividly. And when you ask me about my hardest climbs, like, I'm not saying that they didn't hold some weight, but it's fascinating that the things that you remember 20 years later are not exactly what one might expect. And the experience, that's again why I sometimes I kind of push back on Eric's star rating and this objective thing. It's like, he's not wrong in rating that. And perhaps that's how we have to deal with a rating system. But you can climb a 5-star boulder. Well, let's say you can climb a 4-star boulder and you may never even think about it again. You may not even care. So experiences and adventure are integral in my opinion.
Yeah, that complete package. I think like any other climber, I've got like my tick list. I've got the hardest things I've ever done. I keep track of those, and they are meaningful. Like I exceeded what I set out for myself when I was young, Like, we used to see in hot flashes, like when a V10 got done, like stained glass in Bishop, unreal. Like, oh my God, what is V10? I want to climb one of those in my life, and I've exceeded that now, so I keep track of that. But those aren't the most meaningful experiences for me. They might be for somebody else. A V9 I put up alone out north of town here years ago. I called Power of Contentment. And it's this huge, absolutely huge roof. Some of the best rock anywhere. This gray, swirly gneiss and this enormous roof. And it's a boulder sitting by itself in a prairie. There's like nothing near it. And it's this V9 roof, and the sequence is perfect. It's a perfect boulder, perfect experience. I went out and climbed it alone, and it's nowhere near the hardest thing I've done. And it's just like top 3, absolutely phenomenal experience.
I always just wonder these sequences, these start holds where they are it seems divine. You just go like, how did this happen? And there's something to be said for being out there a lot, climbing a lot of things. I felt like actually route setting gave me some appreciation for just beautiful boulders, not just visually, but that things occurred that just blew my mind. And it used to be that route setting really took a lot of it was informed by the outdoors. And now I actually think something that's interesting is I think that indoors has kind of gone off on its own and has unlocked some movement outdoors that we couldn't see at first. So I think that's beautiful too. But just it's amazing when some of these things occur that you just like. One of my favorite climbs is that I've done is Lost Scott and Two Smoking Barrels in Mallorca, and I just remember sitting there just thinking, you have this little cave that you get to sit in right at the bottom of the wall, and it's just ocean. Like there's no place you couldn't hang out, but they somehow there's this little place you can hang out, and then you chalk up, go straight up the gut of a beautiful cave, and it has a full-on double dyno, no way around it, right at a height that is not going to kill you. It's scary, but it's not insane. And you just go, how did this even exist? Like, this is perfect. Thank you, world.
Yeah, that's the hunt, man. That's what we're looking for. That perfect sequence. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the route setting. I route set for well over 10 years. Taught route setting, had a mentorship program. That movement you discover in doing that goes a long way in sorting through these thousands upon thousands of boulders you find outside. Like you can walk up to a boulder and sense how good the movement is. I can go up and see something like, okay, this is an 8C. I'm not going to climb it, but I can see that it goes and it's really good. Like it's a really good sequence. Yeah, that's something indoor climbing and plastic brought to my life that's really meaningful. Totally different experience, setting, going back years ago, setting for an ABS comp, American Bouldering Series, like, oh man, such a different experience than going out and finding something new. But they're just intimately connected because of that movement. You're looking for that perfection, that experience in just moving over stone or plastic. Pure joy right there.
This is something that I think I've learned more and more over the course of my life, and enjoying different disciplines of climbing, and even different, I don't know if route setting is a discipline. It's just a way to participate in climbing. And hopefully someday I do more developing as well. Is the more you do, the more beautiful it is, because you see things that you did not see before. Just like I was saying, how the landscape for you, Davin, must look different than it does for me. A valley looks different. I don't know how to exactly explain it. I know even as a farmer, I see trees differently, because it's like, oh, look, like that's low on nitrogen. I just know I have this feeling. And so I just love going deeper into our sport. And it's why it's such a fun, lifelong pursuit, because you start route setting, all of a sudden, I'll never forget. There's some V5. I should look it up and link it. There's some V5 in Tennessee I did, and it's really simple. It was only like 3 moves, but you had to recycle this hold, and there was only the perfect amount of holds. It wasn't even that tall. There's nothing like that amazing about it, but I just thought, like, this is the best example of this recycling that I had ever seen, and it occurred in this beautiful way. And so the depth we go, it gets more and more beautiful, I would say.
Yeah, it does. I was thinking of, when you were talking about a similar boulder, I'd have to look it up. It's out of Helsinki in Finland, and it's like V3 or V4. And the guidebook doesn't like give it stars. The rock's excellent. I was over there, just wanted to warm up, so I ran over to it. Man, hands down, best V3 or V4 in the world. And it's movement. It's all movement. A phenomenal sequence. It's like, how the hell did this show up here? Yeah. I think about that problem a lot, actually.
Isn't it weird how you like get these they like get stuck in your head? It's like, this is special and no one really knows about. The one that I think of in the V3 range that a lot of people do know about it, so I'm just going to put it out there. It's called the Old and the Serious, and it's a V3 in Squamish, and you do some nice intro moves, but then you get on a slab, and I don't want to say it's highball, but it's not low. And there's a obvious kind of jug rail, but you have to commit to a smear, and you have to stand up on it, and you have to, I don't care how tall you are, you just have to go, okay, I'm going to stand on this foothold and commit. And if it blows, I'm going to cheese grater down. And then you do that one move and you grab the top, and it just has this, everyone has that same beautiful experience in it. And it's as if some setter just made it so.
Yeah. When COVID world hit, I was really, I don't know, with the craziness in the world, I think I became more selective in what I was seeking to climb. Like I needed a little bit more out of the boulders I was climbing. I put up a boulder north of town here called Black Elk, and it's like that from the second you pull off the ground to the second you finish, and it's like 26 moves out this giant overhanging prow. Um, Perfect every move, perfect rock, perfect landing, heartbreaker finish is everything you'd seek in a boulder. Um, yeah, just amazing, just amazing.
It's so interesting to me where when you discover these things and develop them, it's you're not route setting them, but somehow you're bringing them to into existence. And it's this weird play where we give a lot of respect to the first ascensionist. Wow, this was a Jimmy Webb boulder, and in some ways, it has a theme, a style. Like Jimmy surfaced this, but it's such an interesting thing because, I mean, he didn't chip it. He didn't. But in some ways, like you leave your mark in uncovering something that was already there, but only you could uncover it. And there's something really fascinating about that process.
Yeah, and stylistically between climbers, man, I've walked by so many things. I'm like, well, that's an amazing boulder, amazing wall, but it's not what I'm looking for whatever reason that day. Someone comes back and puts it up, and it's just like, damn, I wish I would have nabbed that first. That's a really good boulder. Yeah. I think it changes day by day too. Yeah. Give me a set of holds to go in and set a V10 in a gym, and that's going to change day to day. And I think it's the same outside. I try to be open-minded, but I've had to re-hike areas. Man, there's some areas I've re-hiked like 8 or 9 times at this point because, maybe one day I'm looking for a 45, a panel with some rails, or maybe I want a compression line, maybe I want super power endurance, maybe I'm looking for like a 30 move V12. Maybe I want like a 2 move V10. And it's weird that sits in the back of your mind. And I know it affects all climbers. You're looking for that thing that's most interesting in that period of time. But as someone who goes out and finds new rock, oh man, more than once I've been frustrated. It's like, damn it, I have to go re-hike that. I kind of have a list right now with spring coming on. The mountains are melting out. It's like there's some areas I found last fall in the Snowy Range here next to us, 30 miles out of town. And it's like, I have a list now. I have to re-hike some of them. Like, how good was that roof, or was that high ball like really as good as I remember it? And man, it's brutal having to re-hike it.
That's some of the power of traveling, is having fresh eyes. Is you come to an area that maybe you've seen a bunch, but somehow it reframes your biases, because we do have biases. And then, like you said, they change day to day, but also they change year to year with experience. My hunch is after going and having that amazing trip in China, when you go back into Wyoming, you go, oh, like there's actually a line right there, right in front of me on to the left. That's a cool arete that I don't know, it just didn't catch you before for whatever reason. Fresh eyes, traveling, all beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
Well, Davin, I did ask you for a tip for the developer, the 20-year-old Davin, but I don't know if that stole your pro tip, but do you have a pro tip for us today?
I think I spoke about following your heart, following that passion. I think that's the best pro tip I can give. Yeah. I think just really like, I think I got lucky when I was young. When I was 20-year-old Davin, I was pretty caught up in what I was doing. I was passionate about it, and that hasn't changed. I got lucky. I found it early on. But yeah, filter through. It's a loud world we live in, and filter through all of that. Filter out how you think other people view you, and do it for yourself. It's amazing. You follow your heart, and you're suddenly doing like crazy cool shit with your life. It's really motivating. Yeah.
It's so interesting, this social media world that we live in. There's a side of me that wants to say that filtering idea is really important, because when there's so many loud voices, it's hard not to compare yourself to them, to hear your voice. But on the other side, some of the things that drive us, we find in media. Like, you said, it's, that picture of Fred and Nicole, and it's this thing of like, we're so lucky that we get to have access to the world now provides lots of different paths one could be inspired by, but somehow it's like the paradox of choice. It's like, but there's too much. It's hard to, listen to your own voice. But I have a hunch when you get out there, out in the wild for a couple of weeks, your voice screams pretty loud because there's nothing else you got. So
Yeah.
another +1 to adventure.
Spend some time alone. I think maybe that helps filter.
Well, I prefer to spend my time alone with my buddies down out deep. I like that too.
Yeah.
All right, Davin. I'll say it again. Thank you for focusing on that discovery and development process, and also just kind of putting a little spotlight on how much effort it takes. I know that a lot of that was still just a deep love and a passion. So it's not like you did it all for everyone else to, just follow the guidebook that without you wouldn't have been created. But I think it's good to just even showcase this. Like, well, what was this boulder when it was just in the forest? It was like, well, it was in the picture of a fly fisherman on Instagram, and then we planned a trip out there, and then we finally sent it, and then a video came about, and then 10 people repeated it, and now it's kind of in the zeitgeist, and understanding the beginning to the end. I appreciate you taking us through what that actually looks like, and sometimes it involves bears.
It does, yeah. And I appreciate the opportunity. I'm humbled by it. It's cool that people can take all this and enjoy it. Yeah, and I'm excited to see where it goes. See how far out there people go. Really cool.
I like that call to adventure. That's the you guys outdo the adventures we just talked about and send Davin a pin for. Well, it sounds like I said Afghanistan because I thought that would be ridiculous, and you were like, "Oh no, I got pins in Afghanistan."
Yeah, worldwide, man. And I'll trade pins with anyone out there. Anyone out there doing something absolutely insane, I'll trade pins.
Oh, that's a hilarious barter. I'll give you 1 New Zealand for 2 Thailands.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys have no problem finding each other because there is not that many of you, but I hope that this spurs on more and the cycle continues. So thanks, Davin. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's been awesome talking about it.
We'll have to do it again. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.